Howdy, howdy, guys.
Howdy.
Oops, my phone's still going over here. Uh,
When you're Bruce Jenny, your phone never stops.
well, that's about true.
You've got, Department of Agriculture texting you, wondering what they should do.
No, that's
No,
that's what
you've
they
got
do. That's what they do to Greg.
various governments, various officials,
Man.
celebrities.
A couple of comments in here real quick. We got Gigi says loves the intro, and then Keith said time flies. And we've all learned so much. I put a comment in there. Can't believe it's been almost 3.5 years, but man,
Oh,
it's true. I do love that intro as well. It's whoops. It's I'm trying to be technology savvy here, and I'm just messing it up.
you're gonna get it.
I don't know, man. If after 3.5 years I haven't gotten it yet, then anyway. But yeah,
Well,
it's been an incredible ride, and I see a lot of names in here, people we recognize that have been on here from the beginning, and then even have some folks in here that have kind of just joined in later, and maybe even some new
yeah.
people will hop on the night. I hope so. But got 71 people in already, so man, it's so much fun. But it's been busy down here. But why don't we just kind of talk about what's going on up in your neck of the woods, guys? I know I titled the video tonight "Beekeeping Challenges 2025" because there have been a lot of them for a lot of people. Everybody has their own stresses and challenges. You know, whether it's no matter what it is, you've got stresses and challenges. But some people have more than others at different times of the year. And right now is the time of the year when most people, you know, either are or should be just loving their bees and having a great time. But weather has presented so many challenges. So, Brian, why don't we start out up there and just east of Cleveland, up there where you're at, and just tell us what's been going on up there. It's been kind of rough for you, I think.
Well, Mother Nature is. I think she's advanced from the state of being bipolar to she's now tripolar. So Northeast Ohio, though, we get that. We get, those fluctuations. We've had, now we're into June, so I can forget about May. But May gave us over twice our average rainfall. And for the month of May up here, we averaged, they said, I think we were like 10 degrees cooler than normal. So we were cold and we were wet. We went from that to Saturday. It was 51 degrees as a high up here. And I'm watching videos online and seeing people, 80 degrees, whatever, and they're harvesting the third time. And I'm like, I'm looking outside like, well, it's 51 here, you know? And now today we were 90. So it's like, yeah. So we go from, everything's cold and wet to now everything is just getting cooked. So the bees, the last time I checked them, they're building up slow. I do have some of the new colonies that I got that, they're just, they're garbage anyways. So they're just garbage. But some of them are in, I think I've only got maybe 3 of them are not into their second box. So, you figure it's been 5 weeks. We've had all the challenges that we've had, and they're building. Brood patterns look good. So I'm content with where they're at. All those new colonies, I'm content. The very first colony I split when I was going into it, and I forget the day. I don't know whether it was Monday. I honestly forget when the last time I checked them was. That's how I'm in a fog today from allergy medicine. So apologize for that if I seem like, dazed and confused today. But the last time I checked them, that very first colony that I split, found Queen Mama. She looked good. She's mated. I saw a small little teeny spot where the eggs looked good, center, and I knew then, I'm like, okay, I got Queen Mama in here. And it was like very next frame I went to, saw her, got her marked, and I did it by hand. So still doing it by hand, I'll have you know. But they're doing good. I've got the swarm that I caught sitting out here in the yard. I move them out here that way I can plop them on a stand when I get back. But I mean, we're starting slow. We're starting very, very slow up here. I've been watching like the Ohio boards on Facebook. There's like Ohio beekeepers, and then there's like North Ohio beekeepers. And somebody posted the other day. They said, "What's everyone think of the flow?" And like the unanimous answer was, "What flow?" So it's just we have challenges, but that's beekeeping. I mean, it's just like anything in farming, agriculture, anything like this, there's challenges. But it gets to the point that we last year was just wrecked, you know. And now this year we're starting out this way, and I kind of laugh about it. It is what it is, I say. So, but we'll see. I mean, that's where we're at up here. I'll just keep plugging along. This year, though, in the grand scheme, I said I'm going to rebuild this year. So if I look at where my colonies are sitting as compared to last year there were loads of queen issues. I had colonies that were killing queens, weren't accepting them. They were going to laying workers. This year, for my very first colony that I had split, they have a mated queen. I'm like, I'm further along than what I was last year. So colonies are being, they're building, and I'm making queens. So I can't complain, but that is Northeast Ohio.
Yeah, it sounds like that's, I think I'm not sure what I would do if I had no honey coming in, because we've had like 2 years ago, we had like a really meager crop. It was probably half of what it
Yeah.
normally is. And I had some though, but I ran out and everything. But man, if I had to tell all my customers I didn't have any honey, that would be really tough. Greg, what about just a little bit south of your area? What's going on there?
Well, it's less than ideal to say the least. It's been, I don't even know where to start. To be honest, the last couple weeks have just been just nose of the grindstone out here with all the things going on. We coming off of it was 1 year ago. I mean, 50 weeks ago, maybe, everything started going south here. Mid June last year, it started to dry up. It got hot, and then it just got worse and worse and worse. And the major flow or nectar or pollen source that we had seen coming in wasn't until really in earnest until the maple started blooming coming out of the wintertime. So here we are enjoying that. The maples bloomed. They bloomed on time this year. Everything was kind of building up and the bees were doing what they do. And the dandelions, first flush of dandelions came on, and the bees started gathering and building. And then autumn olive hit, and it hit in a really big way. And autumn olive is really a brood building flow. It really helps them to make help them make a lot of bee bread. And this year they actually stored a significant amount of that around the brood areas. Not really any surplus honey, but just in the brood areas, which is perfect. It's what you want. You want the bees brooding up just ahead of the flow, but not peaking. And that's exactly what they were on track to do. But it just was going very, very, it was just slowly ramping up. And right when a significant flow was getting ready to happen, for here, it's blackberry. The blackberry bloomed, and literally as soon as it bloomed, we started dropping into we had one night, I think it was 37 degrees one night. The next night was like 42 degrees, and we had rain, and it was like in the 40s and 50s from several days in a row of rain, 3-4 days of rain in a row. Temperatures, like refrigerator cooler type temperatures. So what had happened is the flowers stayed in bloom, but they weren't producing anything. It wasn't warm enough for them to actually pump and produce. And so by the time it did warm up, the bloom duration was over. So blackberry was a complete bust. Black locust, a couple of the trees put a couple of blooms on, and then those all disappeared. I mean, as soon as anything started to do something, we would get torrential rain or cold or several consecutive days of rain. And so those are the big crops here, the big spring crops that you're going to be putting in your extractor is going to be blackberry, black locust, and tulip poplar. Those are the real big ones here in our neck of the woods. And none of them hit. Not even black cherry. I saw maybe 2 or 3 wild black cherries bloom, which that's not a bad thing. I mean, I don't want that in my honey, but just the bloom sequence, it was just completely wrecked
Greg,
this year.
Our blackberry just started here within the last few days. So
your blackberry just started?
Just started.
Well, you might actually get a flow then. That would be tremendous.
Yeah.
You might actually hit.
My mom has blackberries on her property.
Yeah.
And they are in bloom right now.
Well, you might do well because today was warm. However, like here, today was 90 degrees. Yeah. There was this smoke haze from Canada. This morning when we got out here and you see across the ridges, it looked like blue ridges out there on the horizon there from all that, so multiflora rose came in, honeysuckle came in, but I mean, the bees, and it's just some of the wildest things that we've seen this spring. Everyone probably deals with this at some point, but we're getting calls left and right. Customers coming in the supply shop here asking questions. What do I do? They were so excited. Their bees were they crack open their lid. Their bees are all in the top box looking up at them, and they're ready just to start putting supers on. And then when they go down into the box below, it's a ghost town. Nobody's in the bottom box. They're all up in the middle or top box. So then they're asking, what do we do there? It's very odd at the end of May to be giving advice to customers and beekeepers to reverse your boxes. That is just not something you do. That's just not something that we do here. It's just not. But the bees had built and stored just enough of that autumn olive and dandelion. They had moved up into that during this dearth that we were in. It's a cold, wet dearth. It's the opposite of what you normally would think as a hot, dry dearth. It was a cold, wet dearth. So now the bees are just. One thing that I do feel blessed is that we have made so many mistakes. We have learned so many things the hard way. One of the things that we would used to do in the past is just say, give it a few more days. Give it a few more days. Let's give it a week and check back. I don't do that anymore. When I'm getting into my colonies and I'm pulling frames out and I'm seeing no stored nectar, that is a major problem. And so what we have shifted everything to, nearly every single colony now, it has moved to brood production. What I mean by that is we are cutting all the production colonies down. I'm taking super after super off, and we're putting a box on. We're putting a frame feeder in. We're filling the frame feeder, and to get them a quick gorge feeding. And then next week we'll be putting bucket feeders on top of everything, and we'll be keeping frame feeders and bucket feeders on top just to keep them moving forward. And that gets to be very expensive. So to say that this, as you guys know, short stories long. Where's Tom Sosman at? Is he in here? He gets it. I could go for 4 more hours on what we're doing right now and some of these manipulations that we're making because of the weather. But if I've learned anything is, we can look at our Weather Channel app as much as you want, but if you really want to know what the situation is, you got to look into the frames and see what the bees are telling you, and you will very quickly start to see what's going on. So we are mass feeding in a big way right now, and it's pollen patties between the boxes. It's a gallon or a gallon and a half frame feeder. Bucket feeders are going on top, and then we are going to have to fatten them up so they can cruise through. Here's the last thing I'll say before we move on. Here's a real big challenge. We are now past all of the tree crops. We are now past all of the bramble, hedgerow, mid-story, understory crops. And now the game has automatically, very drastically and very quickly shifted to the ground game, because now what is actually blooming, white clover, yellow clover, red clover. And that might sound beautiful, and I'm thankful that there is something coming in, and that's what we're seeing in the frames now. But you got to realize that white clover is not going to stay in bloom in earnest through August. We're going to have maybe 10 days, 14 days, if that, of any kind of significant flow, if the weather cooperates, and then it's going to shut down, and it's just going to come back sporadically throughout the summertime. All of that to say that drastically changes and that drastically charts the course on what we do with the bees the rest of the year. So don't even get me started on the rest of that. We're focused on getting all the nukes off of every single colony. Rain or shine, that's what we've been doing. And you want to talk about a good time. There is nothing quite as fun as pulling bees, creating nukes at 7:30, 8 p.m. at night in the near dark, in the near rain. Good times. But anyways, that's where we're at, Bruce. That would be a challenge, to say the least.
Yeah, down here, I would have a hard time with that, but it could happen. It could happen here. I know that some of the folks up just north of us, even here in Alabama, some of the commercial guys have really struggled with same thing, rain. It hasn't been cold necessarily, but it's been rainy, and they just haven't got much of a crop. I think most people have gotten a little bit, but not enough to, commercial guys that depend on honey. That's tough. And so I think one thing that you've done, Greg, that I think is wise is if you have more than one income stream, if you don't just depend on honey, obviously bees is really what your operation is mostly about. You do produce honey, but that's something you can do even in the off seasons, but you do have to feed like crazy to be able to do that when there's not any natural stuff coming in, or the nectar coming in. But down here, we've been pretty blessed this year, especially when I consider what you guys are going through up there. We had a pretty good spring flow. We did have that cold snap where we actually had snow back in January. I think that just knocked everything out of whack a little bit here. It put everything a little bit behind, and the spring flow started and was coming in pretty good. And then, it just stopped completely. I did a video first part of May where I put, the flow was looking pretty good. I was pretty impressed by, and I put some simple comb frames on there, just expecting them to just go ahead and fill them up, because the flow was going. And there usually is a little bit of a small break in May, like, 10 days to 2 weeks where really not much coming in. But then when the tallow hits, like usually mid-May, it just goes crazy for, three, maybe even 4 weeks. And that's when we really make our hay, or we make our honey, so to speak, down here. But this year, the honey, the nectar flow just stopped, like literally just stopped cold. Early May, I think it was the first week of May, whenever it was, I did that video. That's about when it stopped. And it really we went ahead and pulled the spring honey the week after Mother's Day. And I was worried because the bees, I think, started to consume some of that honey that was up in there. The supers didn't seem as full as I thought they were anyway when I set them up for harvest. Maybe they were, I don't know, but we had a nice harvest. It wasn't what I was thinking, the way they were packing it in. And then I think it was the day we pulled the spring honey. I looked at a tallow tree. It's actually in that video of the harvest, and the bees were starting to work the tallow. The first tallow tree I saw them working, and it has been just gangbusters. I think it's winding down. We've got a few days left probably, but we're about to wrap it up here with our honey flow here for the year. Really, there's a little bit that trickles in throughout the summer, but not significant, not enough they don't really store much. It's more just to kind of survive. And so that's where we're at here. So mentally it's been a little bit of a roller coaster, but not what you guys are going through. If I had a year where I just didn't produce any sellable honey, I would just have I would really have a hard time with that. But I guess people just understand it's farming. If you got a pecan farmer, we got a lot of pecan trees around here, and they just don't produce. What do you do? I mean, you just tell folks, sorry, we don't have any pecans this year, and so I guess sometimes you just have to do that and just really get the bees ready, like you're doing, Greg. Just start preparing them for next year. And Brian, it's been fun following your journey because, in spite of all these challenges you've had beginning in the wintertime with the negative temperatures, all the way through until now, you've still stayed the course. You've still, moved forward, and you're up about where you thought you'd be right now. And you really didn't anticipate a lot of a honey crop this year. So, of course, it'd be nice if you had some nectar coming in to help you, and if you had a little bit of a honey crop. But I think it's been fun to watch how you're overcoming those challenges. Greg, you too, both you guys overcoming those challenges, even though Mother Nature is not cooperating. We did have when that spring flow stopped, it was, I think, because we had like about a 3 or 4 week period of time where we had zero rain. And so, but it rained. I mean, it rained right before the tallow, gave it enough time for the trees to start producing that nectar, and they've been packing it in pretty good. Now we'll see what we end up with in a couple of weeks. We're going to harvest here in a couple of weeks, but right now, last time I went through them significantly, they were still packing some in. So we'll see what happens. But so those are some challenges. We all have challenges. Another thing I thought we'd talk about tonight is I know that there was a report that just came out concerning the bee death and the big die off this year, the current version of CCD. And I've read a little bit about it. I haven't read the article or a lot of detail, but I have read kind of what the conclusion was of the summary. But before we do that, I'd like to just say thanks to everyone for being on here tonight. We've got 160 folks in here right now, and hopefully a few more will join us. But just appreciate all those who are in here, who have been here the whole 3.5 years we've been doing this, and those who are new, and those who have been here part of that time. And tell your friends about us if you enjoy it. We just love to keep seeing this thing grow, and we appreciate y'all being in here. And also tonight, if you'd like to leave some questions for us, according to the topic at hand, put them in all caps. It's much easier to see them. We can't address everything, every single one, every time. But yeah, let's see. And mark some of these comments here. But it's hard to see every comment when we're trying to talk and do the live stream here. But if you put them in all caps, it's easier to see them. So we'll try and capture any questions that we feel like we can answer, especially if they're on topic, and see if we can maybe get to that maybe later on in the chat. Also, specifically, one thing that I think would be kind of fun in the comments tonight is if you could, first of all, kind of tell us where you're from. And second of all, if you have a comment or you want to comment on this, tell us what your struggles have been, kind of what you're going through. I've been watching I got some friends out in Utah. I'm watching them, and, they've had their own challenges, but I think they're in a pretty good time right now. Things are working pretty good for them out there. Of course, Utah is naturally fairly dry, but there are the plants out there, of course, are pretty well adapted to that. And so even in a drier climate, they can make some pretty good honey as long as Mother Nature cooperates. So if there's anyone in here, wherever you're at, if you want to comment kind of what your challenges have been and any thoughts you have, just kind of tell us where you're from so we know specific to your area what's going on there. And I think it'd be kind of fun to kind of chat back and forth in the comments tonight about what everybody's kind of going through, both good and bad, so we can kind of help lift each other up in this thing. Because up in your guys' neck of the woods, there've got to be a lot of people that are just kind of frustrated and struggling right now and just having a real hard time, all up in that area where it's been so tough for you guys. I can't even imagine. Mm-hmm. But maybe, guys, we could address the elephant in the room a little bit about maybe why some of the challenges that happened at the end of last year and beginning of this year occurred. As far as the new study, I guess, that came out, the results are starting to come in as far as at least part of what the problem or the reason for this big die-off was this past year. What is your understanding, Brian, or Greg? What are you guys' understanding as far as what exactly happened? Brian, go ahead. Why don't you lead us?
I didn't read the report really that much. I kind of skimmed, and then I saw like the initial comments, and they said that, what did they say? There's a new variant of deformed wing virus or something like that. And then people are saying amitraz resistance, and, So they were, I think they're more leaning towards what new viruses that they're discovering. And amitraz resistance, I sit there and scratch my head at that, because I'm like, well, if you're saying amitraz resistance, there are folks that had significant losses that don't use amitraz, so that eliminates that. The thing with like the viruses, my mite load last year was, I never had a wash that was over 3. So to say that my colonies were polluted there, now I do know, I mean, it just takes one, and you get that virus in there and then they just spread. I mean, I worked in healthcare, so I know how bacteria, I know how viruses and things like that spread, but I don't fully, I can't say that I accept what they're saying are. And also, I think it was kind of quick. To be honest, I think it was kind of quick. I think there's so much hoopla about it now that I think they were quick to jump to an answer just to kind of keep the news going about it. I don't think, like, if you think scientifically about it, if you want to go down like the geek road and think about, the guys that are in the labs, I don't think there was enough time to fully study everything. But that's just my opinion. I'm not someone that's, I'm not a virologist. I don't work in a lab. I don't do anything like that. It's just my opinion. So that's why when I saw it, I kind of didn't give it that much time, because I thought, yeah, that's kind of premature. Just my opinion. So.
Thoughts, Greg?
How do you guys feel about story time?
Greg, can we do like picture pages? Do you remember picture pages?
I know, but I can open up the book and do the librarian thing.
Man, Bruce, I just made myself old, because Bruce, I know you remember picture pages.
I don't think I know what picture pages is. I know, I wish I had one of those, those like pop out books or pop up books where you open up the page and the thing goes, woo. So right now I would open up I would open up this USDA study, and I would open up, and all you would see is a mite. You close it, and you close it.
Yeah.
All right, let me just read this abstract quickly. It's only a couple paragraphs, right? So hang in there for just a second, okay?
We're hanging in there.
And like all the really fancy words that I can't pronounce, just go ahead and beat me up about that later. So I'm right now I'm looking at the BioRx, for the reprint server. It's the viruses and vector tied to honeybee colony loss. There's a lot of great folks on here. Zach Lamas, Frank Rickovec. There's Jay Evans that I know of. Those three, that everybody else I'm sure is equally talented. They're all involved in this. Here's the abstract of the study. All right. So, and I'll go to the text here. Commercial beekeepers in the U.S. reported severe colony losses early in 2025 as colonies were being staged for the critical role in the almond pollination season in California. Average reported losses since the preceding spring exceeded 60%, with substantial variation among operations. Many colonies were still actively collapsing in January of 2025 when pooled and individual samples were collected, then screened for levels of known honeybee pathogens and parasites. Deformed wing virus strains A and B, along with acute bee paralysis virus, were found at unusually high levels, either in pooled colony samples or in individual bees exhibiting shaking behaviors and morbidity. Differences between these two analyses suggested that direct collections of morbid bees provide a superior diagnostic for casual viruses, a suggestion borne out by confirmation of symptoms and morbidity following isolation and new inoculations. Since these viruses are known to be vectored by parasitic varroa mites, mites from collapsed colonies were in turn screened for resistance to amitraz, a critical miticide used widely by beekeepers. Miticide resistance was found in all collected varroa, underscoring the urgent need for new control strategies for this parasite. While viruses are a likely end-stage cause of colony death, other stressors such as nutritional stress and agrochemicals may have also played significant roles. And let me repeat that, because all of the clickbait and all of the bees are dying because of mites conveniently leaves out this last sentence of the abstract, which again states, while viruses are a likely end stage cause of colony death, other stressors such as nutritional stress and agrochemicals may have also played significant roles. Now, you might ask, well, where were these samples taken from? And how does that fit into the grand scheme of things? Now, these samples were taken from, according to this text here, here we describe analysis based on 6 large commercial beekeeping operations which experienced these severe losses. The operations represent a collective summertime high of 183,750,000 managed colonies, roughly 6.8% of all managed colonies in the United States. Again, so 6 large commercial operations are where the samples came from, representing 6.8% of the overall bee population.
Yeah.
I just give me a minute so I don't say dumb stuff.
While you're collecting your thoughts, Greg, to me it sounds like a lot of the same stuff. Honestly, it's just kind of a lot of the same things. And my question might be, it sounds like they're, and just tell me if I'm wrong in this interpretation, but it sounds to me like they feel like the mites and the viruses are taking out already unhealthy bees. Does that sound right? Because they, I think if you have proper nutrition and if you give the bees the ability to do their thing, I think if they have I think an average queen life, if the queen is a little bit younger, at her prime, you can try and keep those queens at their prime the best way possible. I think those 2 things can go a long way to having healthier bees that can help resist the mites. But is it the viruses that take them out because they're not being fed properly and nutritionally? I know a lot of commercial guys, they really work hard to keep their bees healthy and feed them, and they really try to take care of them. Or is it that the mites and the other pests out there make the bees sick so they don't want to eat and have the proper nutrition? What is it? It's kind of the chicken and the egg question. What came first, the chicken or the egg? I guess that's the question that we have. And then I want to throw in too what we talked about way back in, when this topic first came up and everybody was talking about it. I want to throw out there the weather conditions this year in certain parts of the country were just ridiculously brutal. I mean, if you have commercial beekeepers up there where you guys are at, or anywhere around that area, anywhere up north, man, it was so severe and so cold for so long. And, I don't know what was happening in Florida. I know a lot of guys in Florida, I think, lost a lot, or in other parts of the country where it wasn't super cold, but it may have been a little colder than usual, but maybe there was more rain. Maybe there were other weather conditions that happened, big storms that came through. So I just don't know. I just don't know if this was just a weird year, Mother Nature wise, if it was a weird year because of the environmental factors that were going on in the areas where those colonies were, or if it was just a tougher, mites, tougher virus, a new virus. They actually specifically identified 2 or 3 different, ailments, their illnesses that the bees had. The deformed wing virus and the what do you call the paralysis?
Acute
paralysis.
paralysis.
So I don't know. I mean, we've all been out here trying to figure it out, but they did do some studies and they did confirm a few things that are happening. But like you said, Brian, You can't blame it all on amitraz resistance because what about people? And I think DC mentioned here, what about people that don't use amitraz, products that use
No,
Apivar,
Greg doesn't.
amitraz, or any of that, Bovitraz? What about those people? And
Mhm.
there's just so many, when you think about bees, there's so many variables. I mean, there's so
Yeah.
many things. You got the line of bees, you got the breed of bees, then you have the queen age, then you have how well were those queens mated, then you have the weather, you have the rain, the cold, the drought, and you just have so many facts. Then you have agriculture, you have the farmers, you have the sprays, and you have all the things that everybody's been talking about. And so what is it that's actually causing it? Not sure.
Look at that comment from Keith
Oh,
right
yeah.
there.
Oh, okay.
That's what I'm trying to slow myself down about, because I just want to let it rip. It just like that comes out, and then here's this next new product, and then this next new product. Like, we're no closer to figuring this thing out than we were ever, and that's probably the way it's going to stay. But the fact of the matter is, like, the things that I think are probably were the main culprit for a lot of this, like, that's probably not even being studied.
Could be true.
Yeah, right. And to be fair, a lot of those things you're not going to be able to study. If it was nutritional or severe weather, I mean, what are they going to do? How are you going to study there's nothing. What paper are you going to, peer-reviewed paper, are you going to be able to submit on dead bees? I mean, you're not going to be able to do that, right? So all we can do is document and say, here's the thing, here's where there's no quarter given for nonsense, right? Like, just think about the stream team. Now, just slow it way down. I mean this as humbly as possible. So don't but think about this. We have nearly every single week for 3.5 years have been sharing our beekeeping journey, right? Mm-hmm. Here's the treatments that we're using. Here are our mite counts. Here's what the weather's doing. Here's the flora and fauna report. Like, so we could actually go right back in time and track all of this through and very easily document and just what we were seeing in the field. And that's what we did. And that's what we've been saying. And so we are now at the end of, I think what we're seeing is, like, the weather's terrible. And it's the farming thing where you say, we just have to get past this storm. We just have to get past this week. We just have to get to that next check. We just have to get to that next paycheck, whatever that it is, and everything is going to be fine. We went through that entire horrific summer, fall, and winter praying and hoping that spring was magically a new time period, but it's not. It is still an annual cycle that's not ending until probably mid-June, maybe late June, and then that's one full calendar cycle all the way around. So when I talk to guys like Bob Benny, and Bob says, every 20 years or so, we just have, catastrophic years, and we always bounce back. We always rebuild. We always do better. Here's the thing. I don't know that we're quite out of the woods yet of that one bad year. It's not just one moment or one harvest season. It's an entire year. And so I think that entire year is ending this month. I hope and pray. The good news is the silver lining. That's 19 great years for us young bucks to lie, ahead of us. But this report, what does the report say? It says nothing. It says the same thing that we've been saying over and over and over again. That has not changed. What has changed was the amount of loss and just the abnormalities that are probably never going to be able to be explained. They're never going to be tested for. And the things that potentially are the red herrings, the things that are like the real big systemic problems, that's never going to come to light. All those things, and you put your tinfoil hat on if you want, you leave the room. But all the things that may or may not be going on that has to do with the food system, has to do with weather patterns, all of those things, right? Do you think a study is going to come out and it's going to say, oh yeah, all these bee losses is due to this untrialed new chemical that everyone was mad? No, So we're never going to figure it out. We're never going to find out what that it is. We all would like to know so we can maybe help prevent that or safeguard our bees moving forward. But the fact of the matter is, nothing new was released as I understand in this report as of yet. But there has been some new products released to help keep your bees healthier right on the heels of it. So there's that.
And so I just want to say, though, keep your thought there, Bruce. And you're going to hear this here first. With these new viruses and stuff out there, I would almost bet that if someone were to go into development right now, in another year or two, they're going to be recommending that we have masks on. So if you were to develop a veil that has your protective mask built into it, it would be the greatest veil ever. No other veil like it. It's the greatest.
Unburdenable veil. The unburdenable veil.
Yes. We're looking to be unburdened by what has been. I forgot that quote already.
Unbelievable, Brian.
But I'll
so
tell
anyways,
you, beekeeping today is beekeeping today. And beekeeping tomorrow will be beekeeping tomorrow, because beekeeping yesterday was beekeeping yesterday. So
that makes perfect sense.
Brian, you have a way with words sometimes that blows me away.
Profound. Oh my goodness. We did go there, didn't we?
Go on with your thoughts, Bruce.
Man, that was so good and so profound. I forgot what I was thinking about.
Well, on that note, we'll see you next week, next Wednesday, 8 p.m. I don't know.
No, I
it's
really
frustrating.
I think there's a couple of, I think we can take some positive things out of this. Number one, as Bob Benny said, as we've talked about, and I think DC, others have said in the comments here, people have been trying to figure out this beekeeping thing for many, many years. Even back, I remember, Greg, you read some old tracks from the bee culture or whatever it was.
Yeah, gleanings probably.
Some different gleanings where they were dealing with queen loss and they were dealing with queens and different problems and it wasn't mites and beetles in the 1920s or whatever, 30s, 40s, 50s, but they had their own problems and issues they were dealing with back then. And it constantly changes. They had tracho mites was a huge problem, I guess, back in the 80s and 90s, whenever it was. And then we had the hive beetles introduced somewhere back there, and then the mites came in, or I don't know what the order of it was. And somehow beekeepers have continued to, the old timers, the tough beekeepers, the ones that are tenacious, as Bob Benny talks about, are still here and still growing bees, raising bees, even though many of us have experienced some loss. My loss this year was about like average, if not a little bit less than usual overall with my population of my bees. Last year I had a massive loss early in the year because of some beekeeper errors that I did the previous fall. But so it's just I think who was it mentioned? Was it DC or someone mentioned in the comments that right now beekeepers are informed, the ones in the comments here, because we're able to get on forums like this and we're able to talk it out and look at the comments and share with each other. And so we're able to grow and to learn and then to try different things. And, I've had pretty good success with Apivar over the years. I've used it a lot. And last year, I think it knocked the population of the mites back. And the Auburn study on my bees showed that my bees, as a general rule, the mites were not resistant to Amitraz. And so I used Apivar, but then again in September, October, I had some mite bombs. Not a lot of them, but I had a few here or there that just didn't take care of the problem, apparently. And so then I used different things to figure that out. But had I not tested, I would have never known. And who knows what I would have ended up with. And I was able to knock them back. And I think coming into spring this year, they were as clean as they've ever been. Greg was here January, I think it was February 1st, wasn't it, Greg, when we actually went out to the bee yard and did some testing, and the mite levels were actually pretty good. And I've since put Viroxan in there, some new treatment. We'll see how the results are when I pull the honey off, if it did its job. I always go for a few weeks, a month or two there, where I kind of chew my fingernails a little bit, because I don't know the honey boxes are on there. I'm not going to go down in those brood boxes and mess with them. And I just worry about are the mites building. So as soon as the honey supers come off in a couple of weeks, I'll be putting some kind of mite treatment in there. I'm trying to decide what to do right now, and we'll see how that works. But that's the thing. We're always trying to figure it out, and I think that we're able to kind of maybe come together for some solutions as we talk it out, and that's one thing we can do. And another reason I think these chats are so good is because even if we've had loss, even if we've had very frustrating times, we can kind of encourage and help each other out and help guide each other along the way and provide support for each other. It's like a support group, for all of us in here that are the ones that are having a really hard time and the ones who are having a pretty good time this year. Next year, it could be completely flip flop and be the opposite. You guys might have a great year. We might struggle down here. And so we can kind of realize that we're not in this thing alone, I guess is what I'm trying to say. And that's pretty cool.
This thing's turned into Beekeepers Anonymous, and I can't get past the first stage of acceptance. I just cannot accept. I just cannot accept the loss that so many suffered. I just cannot accept that is due to status quo. I just can't. Something in my bones, it hollers. It's way more than that. It's something way bigger than that. I don't know if we'll ever figure that out. But what I can tell you is that we've never used Apivar ever. We've never used any kind of Amitraz products off or on label, none, zero. And our mite counts going into the wintertime, on average, we're at 0.5 to 1%. So if a 1% threshold or a 0.5% threshold going into wintertime is now well beyond what is acceptable, guys, you're all bets are off, because I mean, what more can you possibly do there? Grammy, stream teams for any pair, yeah, no doubt. I guess what I'm in my mind, what I'm trying to say is, as I'm vocalizing what is on the front of my mind and my thoughts, there's something behind all of that, and I don't want to let all that out, but the fact of the matter really becomes is this very quickly is not a mite issue. This is not a my treatment didn't work issue. This is not our mites have become resistant to the treatment products. That's not the problem. The problem is that the bees don't have viral resistance. Your treatment-free bees aren't going to help you there. Your mite-resistant bees aren't going to help you there. We need bees that are resistant to viruses. I've been saying that for 3 years, over and over and over again. That's the path forward.
I saw a statement on the interwebs the other day, and I believe everything on the interwebs, that said that VSH bees have a higher resistance to viruses than other strains.
Here's a question I have. Here's a question I have, though, kind of piggybacking on that a little bit, Greg, on those comments. I guess if the mites are the vector for the viruses, I guess theoretically, if the mites are under control better, then there'll be fewer viruses. Does that make sense?
It does.
I think that's the philosophy. And then, I have also heard what Brian said, that bees that tend to be more resistant to the mites can also tend to be a little more resistant to the viruses and be healthier bees. In my particular experience, I've had some VS, I've experimented with things, and I will say that the colonies that I have that have the VSH traits, even though they are more spicy than I like much of the time, not all the time, but much of the time, they are very vibrant and healthy bees. They're tough, and they just blow up and they do really well. Now, as far as are the mite numbers down, maybe a little bit, but it's not like a miracle thing. It's not like the the rest of my bee population, the bees, the queens I bring in from Hawaii, have huge mite counts, and the VSH have no mites. That's not really what it's like. But they are. I do know they're vibrant. I haven't had them checked for viruses, although I have had my bees checked for whatever the lab is in Maryland where they do all kinds of studies. I've had those samples pulled by the bee inspector. They send them up, and my bees are typically pretty healthy. They check for, like, I don't know how many different viruses and all kinds of things they check for, and typically my bees they score pretty well on that. But there is no silver bullet, I think, is the answer. I think to me a really important part of it is just a bottom line, in my opinion. Bees are livestock. Okay, we're farming. When we have bees in a hive, we are farming. And now bees are different than cows, obviously, and horses. But you don't put a herd of cattle in the field and just leave them alone and say survival of the fittest, and you just stick them out there, and you never worry about them. You never feed them if they get hungry. You never, put hay out to them. You just say, okay, if this, I got 10 cows out there, or I got 100 cows. If the 10 that survive, we're just going to breed off of those cows. They might be skin and bones, but we're going to just breed off of those. You don't do that. When you put them in a box, this is my opinion. When you put them in a box, they are no longer, then they become your responsibility and your stewardship. I do believe that bees can develop traits. There are obviously treatment-free beekeepers that have good, strong, healthy bees. I'm not trying to say that. What I'm saying is you have to manage them. And we can go around in circles. I know we've talked about this multiple times over the years, but you have to manage your bees. Whatever your strategy is, you have to manage them. You need to, if there's 3 months with no rain, like you guys had up there last year, 3 or 4 months with no rain, you might just have to feed them. You might just have to do that so they don't starve. If there's like you've been experiencing this rain and they're not bringing honey in, they may not have the stores to be able to survive without you feeding them this upcoming year.
I had somebody that commented about some of like the losses last year, and they said that feeding them the sugar is what killed them. And I said, well, there's no food for them. And I fed if they consumed 2 to 3 times the amount of syrup that they normally would in that time frame, what would the loss, like, I would have come out of the winter with no colonies. So
I think there's nothing wrong with people working on it and trying to develop those lines. I think that's great.
Yeah.
Personally, I'm not trying to say that you shouldn't work on treatment-free bees. You shouldn't work on tough, rugged, hardy bees, but I also am not going to be critical of the people who go ahead and they treat and they do. You got to look at what works best for you. And I've had people that get really pretty aggressive about the treatment-free thing. I've also had people that just ridicule those people because they're like, you can't do that. I'm like, well, people are doing both. So just, you need to figure out what works best for you. So I think we just need to, my opinion is, as soon as you take bees and put them in a box and you put more than one colony in a location, you're already taking them out of their natural, what they would normally do, because you don't have, like, I've got 40 to 45 colonies at Appleton Farms right now. Nowhere in nature do you have 45 colonies sitting within, 25, 40 yards of each other. They just on 4 on a pallet. That doesn't happen in nature. You don't have a tree with 4 beehives sticking out of 4 different sides of a tree. You know what I mean? They spread themselves out a little bit. So that's just kind of I'm trying to get on a soapbox, but I think we just need to be, and we've talked about this before, just be careful about how we judge other people and what they're doing.
Yeah.
The
Greg,
problem
I didn't mean to cut you off.
when the most current information says the problem is amatraz resistant mites, and the bees are dying because of viral loads. I mean, it doesn't. We automatically assume that low mite populations mean low viral transmission, and that's not true. We automatically assume that high mite loads equals high viral transmission, and that also is not true. And that's where the difficulty that I think is always going to lie with honeybees and varroa mites. if we have not gotten a handle after how many decades of removing varroa mites out of this equation, it would be fair to assume that the relationship between the honeybee and the varroa mite is probably going to live on into perpetuity. That being said, if we develop a line of bees that, yes, runs mites out, or B, removes diseased pupae out of the colony, that's great. But that does not remove the entire equation and bring the baseline down to where there is 0% mite ratio inside the colony. If people are seeing, or if beekeepers have colonies that are at 0.5, or like myself, 0.5 or 1% was the some of the greatest late washes going into the wintertime, what are you going to do? That's a very squeaky clean report to go into the wintertime. If we can't test those dead bees now, right? We don't know what those were, but what if there is a different virulent or a different strain that is way more impactful than we can fully understand? Those are the things maybe that we could be looking into. But what can we do from a viral resiliency standpoint for the bees? It's like the three of us saying, I'm going to go to Walmart, but before I walk in there, guys, I have an entourage, and my entourage is going to go in and pull out all of the snick-sniffling people. They're going to get those the snotty nose people, get those out of Walmart. Okay, before I walk in there, get those out of there, and then I'm going to have somebody else going through and saying, okay, there's snot juice on this and snot juice on that. We're going to clean up. We're going to remove those off the hangers. So now you're not going to come in contact with any of that. Now I get to go into Walmart and do and still, right? But there is one lingering something somewhere that could be a one person, that could be a super spreader of, you name whatever that it could possibly be, and all bets are off. Right? But what if the person going into the Walmart had viral defense built into their own body? What if there was viral resistance built within us, so that, cool, you sneeze, that's great. Where it's less of an issue. That's what I'm trying to say. So before all the treatment-free beekeepers and all the VSH beekeepers start getting, pounding the war drums that, oh my gosh, the stream team once again is talking bad about treatment-free or VSH, that's not what we're saying. But that's not the long-term answer. It's not even proving to be a solid short-term answer at large scale. What we need is bees that have viral defense themselves. They can withstand these things. Because in 30 some years, if we can't figure out how to remove mites from the equation, it's a safe bet to say they're going to be here for a little while longer. I'm going to stop there before I say something really dumb, or even dumber.
Greg,
how about some questions, Bruce? You have some questions we can get to?
Greg. What you always say, hold on, I can figure this out. There are no absolutes.
Look at that.
Right?
That's almost like that was a voice from above.
Yes. There are no absolutes.
This right here, now I see where Greg is, and he's like teetering, and he's almost going to go just full guns blazing into this. So I'm going to show this comment right here, and it's going to take him down to a level of peace. Watch this. Look at that.
There you go.
Change the subject completely. There you go. Mark Center just ordered 4 of Greg's boxes. I'm looking forward to trying wax it. Well, Mr. Zenner, thank you for your order. I really hope you love them. Definitely let me know what you think of them. Give us some feedback. So thank you for your support.
You see what I did there?
Speaking of that, I talked to Greg today about an opportunity down here. We may have to order quite a few of his boxes for a friend of mine down here. So we're pretty excited about that. Hopefully more to come on that in the future.
Good stuff.
But hey, that was I think that was really good. And once again, I think it's important that everyone work together on this. I think all the VSH, the treatment free, the treatment people, the people trying to develop, mite resistant and virus resistant bees. I think it's all important. So just got to keep working together on this.
Mhm.
Look at JW's comment there. I mean,
Exactly. Yeah.
we
That's
haven't figured out
right.
the common cold yet. You know,
Yeah. Well,
Yeah, they haven't figured it out, but remember when the common cold was introduced to the native people, the indigenous people in various places, it wiped out entire populations before they developed a resistance to it.
mhm.
You know,
Yeah.
so it's kind of that's what we're talking about. And the bees, I think, have done a really good job of adapting to
Yeah.
a lot of stuff out there. I mean, just the mites alone, when the mites first came, you know, it was wiping bees out all over the place, and the bees are much more, you know, overall the
Mhm.
bees and the beekeepers have become better at all that. So it's just that's one reason bees have survived for thousands of years is because they do have an
Yep.
ability to adapt, and
Yeah.
that's why there's one reason they're such incredible little critters. But
Mhm. You know, Lisa has a comment there. It says the need to study on how to build up a honeybee's immune system. I remember when we had on Randy Oliver and he was talking about there being like a colostrum in uh oh gosh, my mind went blank. Um in the
yeah, there
royal
was
jelly.
was it royal jelly or was it the fat?
And
It was
it's
the royal
well,
jelly.
no,
Okay.
it's in the royal jelly. So when the bees are eating it, you know, they get like that boost. It's just like when, you know, when babies are born, they get that colostrum and they tend to be healthier children. You know, you're giving them that boost. So if you have poor nutrition, like last year there was absolutely nothing, and then you get into, you know, like Greg has said it, yeah, you had some pollen and things like that, but you if you have an inferior food source, if you're starting out like with the winter, we had this exceptionally long winter and we start out going into it with poorly fed bees. So, you know, it's like anybody, if you know, go on some like great adventure, go on some hike, whatever it is, and you're sick, you're not going to last. So there's multiple, and I said it way back. I said I call it like the perfect storm because you had all of these separate elements that all kind of came together at the same time, and they
Yeah.
merged together, and you had these nutrition factors, you had virus factors, you had all of these different factors that all kind of intersected, and it just created this super highway of problems, and we led to this colony collapse issue.
Yeah. Let's see. Okay. So yeah, I just think I mean we talked about, you know, kind of getting back to the topic at hand as far as the video tonight, Beekeeping Challenges 2025. Start off talking about weather conditions and difficult things that people are going through right now. Some people, and I did, some people did write down in the comments about how in their areas things are going pretty good and others were having a lot of problems. And I think rain was a huge part of that across the country. Rain, and I know you guys have also had cooler temperatures than what you wanted to deal with. And so, and then of course we talked about the study and why so many people possibly lost so many bees. But um, you know, there's always going to be challenges. Always, and you know, sometimes sometimes people may feel like they have too many things going on at one time and get too stressed. But everybody has their own individual set of challenges, and then there's regional sets of challenges for all the beekeepers in that area, and then each individual colony also has to battle its own challenges according to genetics and everything going on there. But one thing, before we kind of move on and start answering some questions, you know, Randy Oliver, when he was on, I think he was on here, I know on your channel, Brian, and maybe when he came on the live chat that night, he talked about how he just breeds from the best. He has certain criteria he looks for. And the first one is attitude. And then he goes down the list from there and has a few traits that he works for. And he tries to develop the best bee that he can and breed from the best. And over time, it sounds like his bees have, you know, he's developed a strain that he likes. And in doing that, he's noticed that they seem to be more mite resistant. It's hard for him to find mites sometimes in his bees. But that's strictly from breeding from the most gentle bees that have the most apparent resistance to the mites, and just kind of really over many years of working on it, he's developed a line that he really likes. And so he would never say, I think that his bees are mite resistant or mite free, but he doesn't find a lot of mites. And I know, Greg, you've had some similar experience with yours, just breeding from the best, healthiest bees that you have that have the traits that you like, and you've developed a bee that you really like. And a side effect of that has been, they seem to be pretty tough, rugged bees. And so I just think you guys up there, I really think a big part of your problem was just that bitter cold weather for
I really
months
think
on
so.
end. And it was like in the negative below zero temperatures for weeks on end. And I just think that was just, I know it gets cold up there, but it was crazy cold compared to even what you guys are used to. So I just think that was a part, that's my opinion, that was a big part of the problems you guys had up there, but I could be wrong. I don't think it
You know what
necessarily
I
had to
do
do with,
know? I do know Randy Oliver had trouble.
he did have some, yes, you're right.
Right. Here's what I know. We had 1 yard of 100, and 99 died, and 1 made it. And this one that made it's right in the middle of all of them. So if anything had to do with viruses, they would be equally susceptible. Any other, it couldn't be any more uniform than that. So you can believe that that colony became a priority, and it is a priority this year. And they're doing amazing, doing beautiful. They've had 0 treatments, nothing coming out of the spring. They're doing wonderful. And I've already grafted several hundred daughters off of that particular queen line. To me, that is an outlier. That is a survivor of 1 out of 100. That's the 1%er. So a lot of our genetic backbone this year in our queen line moving forward is the 1%er. And what's great about her is her specific line. She's a daughter of the Monster Hive. So this storyline continues to just be, you put so much effort into specific genetic types and certain attributes and all these things, right? And you put them out there, and it's battle royale in the wintertime. And whoever comes out of it and comes through the spring, like, there is no bias anymore. There is no, I like the color of this one. There's no, this one is in a prettier box. It's who came out on top and who's looking good. And that's the fun part about, I think, breeding queen lines, is that's the funnest part. Is the loss is terrible. However, the loss is the great equalizer, because the standouts really shine, and those become a part of the future. I do know that, Bruce. Sorry to cut you off there. I was going to say something else smart, but it didn't end up that way.
That's how bees have survived for thousands of years, right?
That's
the survivors shine and they survive. And so yeah, that makes a lot of sense. And I was going to ask, my next question was going to be, is the Monster Hive still in existence? And if so, kind of what's going on there? It sounds like you kind of answered that question. That is it still rocking and rolling, or what's the Monster Hive doing now?
No, the Monster Hive, she moved. I broke that whole thing down late last year, and primarily to harvest the genetics. So I broke that down completely, moved her back to a single box, and then split everything out of that. That entire back part of the barn is, I mean, it is it's wet, to say the least. So I've not moved anything back into that area. They're out in the different out yards, or here at the farmyard on one of the ridges here. But the daughters are doing great. So
that's awesome, man. That's a cool story. Well, let's go through and let's answer some questions we have here. Kind of whip through them kind of quick. And some of these, if you were in here early and you got questions early, we may be rehashing over a few topics just a little bit here. But first of all, Brian, I really appreciate the $20 super chat. That means a lot. And folks who may not know these super chats, super stickers, they really do help.
Stream Team. Don't take that.
What's that?
I misspelled Stream Team there.
The street team.
Don't hold that.
Unbelievable. What kind of YouTube beekeeper would do something like miss a letter? I expect more from my free content, Brian. Okay.
It's the greatest super chat
let's see, Greg. when do you cut your loss if there's no flow and you're feeding them? It's very costly. I guess the question is, how do you afford it? How do you do it when you
I mean,
decide just to cut your losses?
you don't. Well, I mean, colonies that what that looks like is, you try to eventually you start to earmark and allocate your resources to do specific functions. And we had more than we've ever had set aside for honey production this year. And the way things are going, I'm pulling off all the supers, and they're going into doubles with some fresh foundation. And I will just pump the feed on the draw comb and to brood and to build brood up the rest of the year. I'm not going to tie up supers. I'm not going to not put feed on because of a honey crop. I can see the writing on the wall. And so we're not even going to get into that territory. All the honey supers, the mediums are off, and we're going to be focused on slowly building brood and supplementing their diet for the rest of this season. And then if they catch a stride, and here's the thing, God's got the weather thing figured out. We're just trying to see how it impacts what our plans are out here. All I'm doing is just adjusting my best to what I'm seeing is happening now and what it looks like, how that'll impact in the future. I do know this is when I'm humble enough to see what is going on, and I go ahead and make a call and I play that safer, make that safer move. It continually works out. But when I say, I'll just give it another week, and the bees are dwindling, I'm losing brood size, frames are now becoming sparse and empty, pollen frames are now packed on the outsides and no one's there to protect them. All these things go downhill very quickly and start to spiral out of control, because then robbing starts and then hive beetles can start moving in, and then it's one thing after another. You got to think about bees are, in my opinion, because JW is on here. He's a wizard when it comes to these kind of things, but when it comes to cattle, right? So we can't compare bees and cattle, but I've raised some cows and I have seen what happens, and I've raised some bees and I've also seen what happens. But when livestock loses condition, it takes 3 or 4 times longer to build them up to where they were. So for me, I am seeing the potential of them losing condition, and I can already start to see it. The brood wall has stopped. There's no honey bands above things anymore. There's no incoming fresh nectar any longer, and the resources are looking scarce and sparse. I'm not going to wait another week. Another week is the difference between an egg laid and capped. That's a big deal. And so I'm putting food on everything to keep everything moving forward. And if the nectar flow kicks in and turns around, great. Those colonies that were getting fed to make some brood and to keep them subsisting until then, perfect, great, right? We'll just keep building up heavy on that. And if we get to the point to where there's flow coming later, we'll talk about capturing that. But I'm capturing the asset now before it becomes a loss.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, that's critical. And well, you already mentioned that you've had people come into your store and asking, "What do I do? What do I do?" So, because especially these people that may have just a hive or 2 or 3 or 4, they get into bees and they have the goal of building them up and trying to keep them alive, first of all, and secondly, trying to maybe make a honey crop. What do you tell them to do? Like if you have a brand new hobbyist or someone that's been in a year or 2 that really was counting on the honey crop this year, how do you kind of talk them off that cliff or help them get through that? What do you tell them?
It's hard because you hit a crossroads in the spring of the year, whether it's a package or it's an overwinter colony. You have to make a decision and say, I'm building this colony up into 2 deeps, and then we're going to talk about supers from there. Or you're going to say, I'm going to try to build them into 2 deep, shake them into 1 and add supers. Or you're going to say, I'm going to try to keep them in a single box and try to add supers on there. Everybody's a little bit different when it comes to that. But if you allocate and try and say, I've got it, let's say you've got a a package of bees, and now they're completely, the 10 frame box is completely stacked out, and you say, I want to make honey. Well, you totally can, right? But the effort that it's going to take those bees to draw out all the comb and do those things, are you going to be able to get that package into double deeps and then stack medium supers up from there? I mean, maybe. Can you get them into a 10 frame box and then stack mediums on top of there and then get one medium 10 frame box of honey off the package? Absolutely. So you have to choose what you're doing, and then there's no turning back. And so that's what I ask folks is, what is your main concern? Do you have to? Here's some of the facts. Some of the facts are, the husband wants to get into beekeeping, and the wife says, okay, but I got to have some honey. So he says, at all costs, I have got to make some honey this year. How do I do that? Okay, let's talk about that. Here are some things that you can do. Some folks say, you know what? I just want to see these bees build up as big and robust as they possibly can, and we'll worry about honey later. Beautiful, right? Because you can build these bees up, and if they get bigger than what you want for wintertime, no problem. There's a plan for that. So the conservative route is build them up, and if they're so big, they're producing a honey crop, and they're a bigger size colony than you want for winter, no problem. We have a plan for that. We'll talk about it when we get there. If your plan is, I definitely want to get honey off of this package, off this spring colony, off this swarm, then great, but we got to manage that accordingly, and balance out the how big they are, what they can actually do in that time frame.
Yeah, and the other question is, on a year like this, in your region where there's no nectar coming in, it might be a little more difficult. Sometimes you just have to focus on healthy bees and may have to feed them and get them through this year and build them up so they'll be primed and ready to go in the spring next year. Sometimes that's just how it is.
I did see, though, my last inspection, and it was not a lot, but I did see some of the supers. And when I added on the medium above my deeps, I did see, I'm talking 30 cells, 40 cells here and there of wet nectar. So there's a little trickle. It was nothing to shake a stick at, but if they're throwing a little bit in there, to me that says, okay, there's enough of beyond what they're consuming, they're throwing in that little bit. So I was fine with that. Now we'll see if after this week, when this weather has warmed, if when I go in and do my next inspection, I see absolutely no movement forward, then on all of my newer colonies, I probably will end up doing, what Greg's done. I probably am going to throw buckets back on and I'm just going to have to, I'll know, well, none of those colonies, I'm not going to look at anything as far as honey, I probably won't anyways, but I want them to build. So that's my whole goal this year, is to build. And if they're not getting what they need from foraging, I'm not going to let them struggle.
Good. All right. Next question is, we're going way back to near the beginning of the chat. Mike Davis says, can I put a medium honey super between two deep brood boxes to get them to draw out the comb in the super faster?
What do you think, Bruce?
You can.
Yes. That's what I'll say. Yes.
My question would be, are you going to have a queen excluder underneath that medium? The issue would be, in my case, they'll draw it out, but will the queen start laying in there? And if you don't mind that, it's okay. But if she starts laying in there, some people don't want that. So I would say, if you get the queen in the bottom box, put a queen excluder down, then put the empty foundation there, and then put the other box on top, they'll definitely draw it out and you'll have clean comb. I don't mind if the queen lays in it a little bit. It doesn't bother me too bad. So, but they'll definitely draw it out. It's the same principle as under supering honey supers. This closer to the brood is closer to the queen, and they can't stand to have dead space. They want to have it all drawn out. So they'll draw it out pretty quickly. I think it is possible to do that. And it is, some people do that. I would caution you, if you don't want eggs in that comb, to just stick it in there without an excluder and have the, have the queen, have it away from that if you want to avoid eggs in your super. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Maybe that any other comments on that? That makes sense. I hope that covered it pretty good.
Nope.
All right.
Sounds good.
Let's just move on here. Next question. Michael asked if my box of the Infinity frames came in last week. It did, and I did put it in there a few days ago. So we'll see. It's near the end of our flow. If they draw out a complete super of Infinity comb that I put on top of a strong colony, 4 days ago, if they draw it out by the end of our honey flow, then I'll know it's really good stuff. And I think it's pretty good stuff anyway. It really is not fair to drop it in at like 10 days before the flow's over and expect them to fill it out. But we'll see. We'll see what they do with it. I'm going to be checking it this weekend. I actually did a little video, like a little 4-minute video, 5-minute video, showing myself putting me and my son-in-law, we put it on there. My son-in-law and I put it on there. And so I'm hoping to get that video dropping here in the next day or two. Maybe it's ready. I just got to get a thumbnail and get it uploaded. It's pretty much ready. So
those frames are tough, huh?
I actually, it was pretty impressive how tough those things are, how strong they are. You can use them like a hammer, I think, like he said.
If you had some kind of like rabid dog come run through your apiary when you're working them, I would just grab one of them frames and just crack the dog with it.
You might have a dog that's gets knocked out if you do that. So you better be careful.
They are truly multi-purpose.
They're incredible. They're pretty amazing. I got to quit marking comments because we got a lot to go through still.
You're gonna have like 20 sub.
Loma Vista. Let's see. I don't know why. Did you mark that one, Brian? The ratio of water to honey.
Yes. Todd asked this question last week.
Oh, okay.
And we didn't have time to get to it. The ratio of water to honey to make feed if someone wanted to do so.
I have no idea.
I don't know.
I don't know. You're thinning.
If you want to feed honey to the bees instead of sugar or corn syrup, what is the ratio? How much water would you put in that honey to feed them like in a feeder?
Whew.
I know people do it. I know people do it, but I have no idea what they do, how they do it.
Let's say you're at $10 a pound for honey.
My allergy brain, I can't compute that right now.
Well, it's pretty much pro sweet.
Yeah.
It's a little thicker, So if you were, let's say you're at 12 pounds a gallon, if you're getting it down to a 1-to-1 at what is that? 9 pounds, 12. And if your water is 8 pounds a gallon, I don't know, Todd. Mix it up. Mix them up and let us know.
Try and see. I actually, I've heard, and I might be wrong on this, Greg. You know the ins and outs of this better than I do, but I have used corn syrup to feed my bees some, and commercial guy down the road does it and grows his bees like crazy. I know it's a taboo for some people, but it works well for him and it's worked well for me. But we just take it, and especially in the wintertime, that stuff is thick. You can't hardly pump it when it's cold outside. But we'll just put 50%, mix it 1-to-1 corn syrup, 1-to-1 water, and then just feed it, and it works well. And I think honey is a very similar texture from what I've heard as corn syrup. It's about the same weight and everything, but I hate to even go there because I do not know the answer to that. There's probably some information online you can find if you want to do that. I can't give you a good answer for that. And I hate to say that, Todd, but I really just don't know. Be worth looking into though, for those interested in doing that. My honey is so valuable. I have to put it in. I have to either leave it on the hives for the bees or put it in jars to sell. I can't take it off and then feed it back. I just don't typically, I don't have enough to do that in my case. So here's another really, really cool comment, Greg. Bracken ordered his bottling tank and he said he received it. So that's awesome. Bracken, he said he ordered the same one I've got, and so if he did, then he'll love it because I've used
Wow.
mine to actually bottle up. I could show it to folks here again. I've had this Maxim thing. I got it in 2018 or 2019, I think. I can't remember exactly when it was, but let's see if I can turn this around here. There it is. And it's got they call it dripless valve. It does drip a little bit, but man, it's so fast. I can bottle up. The difference between this and the automated ones is that you do have to manually watch the jar. It doesn't just set it. You can't set it on a certain poundage and have it work that way, but it just is really fast. I've done thousands of bottles of honey with that thing. It works extremely well. And the tank is solid, double jacketed, and it works well. And Greg, I know you're a Maxent. You got the hat on there. You're a Maxent guy right now. You sell these things, and Bracken, you'll love it. And thanks, Greg, for making that happen.
Well, Bracken, thanks for reaching out to place that order. That I got a text alert with a photo of it there on your doorstep there. So I know you'll absolutely love it. Like Bruce says, we just took a video. We've got one here in the shop. That's what we bottle out of. I was so happy to get the Chinese stuff out of here and get American made here in the shop to bottle our honey out of. And it is so fast. I mean, it is absolutely incredible how fast you can bottle from a good bottling tank. Like Bruce said, every single dripless valve that I've ever used or seen, when you come down and you let up, there's this little tiny, like a little hoop-de-doo of honey. And that's just when you just bring your jar, you just rub your jar right across that.
That's right.
And then nothing's, going on to where you're working. But man, that is so, I can't wait to see Bracken, you use that thing. But
right.
I know you absolutely love it. You can't get any better than that. Made in America. It's actually stainless steel 304. That's made in America. American hands, American families, American components, assembled, engineered, and actually produced here in the United States of America. Can't get any better than that. So Bracken, really appreciate your support on that.
Well, Bracken talked to me about it, and I told him how happy I was with mine, and he just one of those buy once, cry once type of things, and I guess he just decided to pull the trigger, so he did it.
Bracken, we'll see. I think we'll see you in a couple weeks. Looks like.
Yeah,
so.
I think he's coming down for the honey harvest. That'll be awesome. Alex Morgan says, "I'm from Victoria, Australia. Have any of you done a trap out before, and do you have any tips for performing one?" I have done a trap out once.
Trap out king. Let's hear it, Bruce.
It worked, but it's a lot of work. I'll put it that way. It's just kind of. I have a friend, Doug Trawick, up a few miles north of here, back in the 2015, 2016 time frame, whenever it was that I was trying to catch bees any way I could, and he developed a system for trap outs where he would catch the queen. He doesn't have a YouTube channel. I never went and saw how he did it, but he had this method he used where he would actually, a lot of times in trap outs, you sacrifice the queen. She never comes out of the trap out. For those who don't understand what a trap out is, basically what you do is you set up a colony. You basically form a cone, like a cone out of a screen material. And the bees, they leave the colony. The foragers leave the colony to go forage. And when they come back, they can't get back in the hive. And you set a box right near it, right next to it with, the resources they need, maybe some comb in there. And the bees will go in there and they'll just develop a colony. They'll start to bring resources in. And you can even drop a frame of brood in there once you get a few bees in there, and they can make their own queen over time. But it takes weeks to do this, because you really need for all the brood that's in the original colony to emerge. And then they start to leave. And so it takes a long time for it to take place. And but it's kind of a wild thing when it first starts, because the bees will fly away, they'll try to come back, and they're all on the wall trying to get in. They can't get in the high and back in the wall or the tree. And then but then they start going in that box, and then it becomes a more organized thing. And but somehow Doug would get the queen to come out. He would catch the queen in a pretty high percentage of those things. But I did it one time and it worked. I think I just dropped a frame of brood in there. They made their own queen, or maybe a frame with a queen cell, and they ended up working well. And I think it was back in 2015. I was a new beekeeper back then, just trying any and everything I could, and it did work. But you got to make sure you seal off. If there's any way those bees can get back into the original hive, it won't work, because they'll find that entrance, that opening, and they'll be back in there. So I would just recommend you kind of look at videos, just try to figure it out and just try it out. They do work, but it wasn't something I want to try to do. There's a lot of work involved to it, and it can be kind of
Time
tricky.
consuming.
You got to make several trips to the location and everything. And so anyway, it's kind of fun, but it's one of those things that I did once. And that was all I wanted to do it. Okay, here's a great question. This is one of the questions that a lot of beekeepers have. Honey supers, do you over super or under super? Which is best?
Yes.
Yes.
I'll
Brian,
say they both. Go ahead, Brian.
I toss mine under.
Do you?
Yeah, it's just and I mean I literally have done both. It just all depends, but I've done both. So to say which one is better than the other, I mean context is key. There's so many variables that go into that. But I've done both and they both work.
Yeah. So. I do mostly 90% is over supering, but sometimes I'll under super. And when I pull that spring honey crop, I get out there a week or two beforehand and I put all the honey that's going to go in the harvest. I put it on top so it's easy to pull. So that's in a way that's under supering because you're putting the boxes that aren't full on the bottom. But then I come back and put the empty supers right back on top. And so now it's over supering again. But they both work. I think under supering might work a little better if you're trying to dry out foundation, possibly like a whole box of foundation.
Mm-hmm.
It may work better because once again, those bees don't like that dead space. But I've had some in a good flow, or even like maybe more probably in a mediocre flow where they're just trying to pack honey wherever they can and they don't want to dry out the comb and they'll just walk right over that foundation to get up to it. And then they'll start to draw it out later. If they have so much honey coming in, they just want to put it all away. So I think they both work probably because I have quite a bit of comb, just comb stored. I over super and they come right up to the comb when they're ready. They just work their way up and start filling it up. And so it's worked out well for me to do that. One thing I will tell you, a little trick I've learned that I really believe, I think it works. I'm pretty sure Gus Mitchell does it. I know that commercial guy up north of us here does it. And then Randall Carter, who we had on the channel, he doesn't have bees. I think he moved to Nebraska or somewhere. I don't know if he has bees anymore, but Randall used this technique. But what he does is if he has more than one super, he'll stagger. If you watch my videos, you'll see where I do that. Like I'll have one super right above the queen excluder. Second box, I stagger forward just a little bit. It's only like a quarter of an inch to a half inch back there. Mm-hmm. And one question I get a lot on that is there an issue with rain? And I will tell you, I've never had an issue with rain. The bees really guard it, and it's such a small opening. Mm-hmm. I've never had any issues at all with rain running down there creating any problems. Mm-hmm. It's just such a small little, but it works well. And if I only have one super, I'll put a stick in the corner under the lid. I think it's important to have an upper entrance of some kind. I'm not sure if the bees use it much as an entrance or if it's more just for ventilation, but they just love it, and they seem to do better over an excluder if I do that. But
I've got each of my 3 that survived that are built up with supers on them. I've got them all set up like that. I've got one of the boxes shifted, and you go out there, and I go out there, and literally the entire from one edge to the other, it's lined up with bees on it.
They absolutely love it. They work, and they're just out there, they just seem to really be at peace and happy with that situation. The only time that becomes a problem is if the hive is starting to die out and the population goes down, and the other hives can start to rob it that way if they don't have enough to defend it. But a good strong colony that you have honey super stacked on should be strong enough to defend a small tiny crack like that. So anyway, but those are a couple of tips I have, but probably 80 to 90% of the time, if not more, I over super. It's not that I don't believe in under supering. It's just the convenience of doing that. It's just such a pain to go through all the colonies I have and try to pick up all those supers and put an empty box underneath. Okay. I'm not keeping up with the comments because I'm trying to read the ones we started. So if there's something I need to see, Brian, let me know.
No, JW's being JW.
All right. This is just a comment from Bee Haven. Hello, friends. So good to see you back, Mr. Burns. I would agree. Glad you're here, Greg. That was early in the chat. Let's see. DC asked the question, what about the fact that it does not seem to have affected feral colonies? I think that was back when we were talking about colonies dying off. And I guess my question would be, how do we know it's not affecting feral colonies?
I
I'm sure
think
it
in
does
Ohio,
affect
though,
some.
and Greg, correct me if I'm wrong, but I think in Ohio they say there's like every year it's like a 50% loss in feral colonies. It's a high
Uh,
percentage. It's higher than, I know it's higher than like normal losses for colonies that are managed by beekeepers,
it
but
is. Yeah. There's about a
like
30% survival of swarms is about the average survival is 30%.
yeah. So
Yeah, I
yeah,
don't. How do they know that though? That's my question. How do you know what the
How do
survival
they
rate is
know
in feral
anything?
colonies? How do
How
they
do they
know
know
that?
any
I
how
mean,
do they know anything about anything? I don't even know.
in order to really be able, oops, I didn't mean to do that yet. I
yeah,
was just going to start that for later. In order
yeah,
to really be able to tell how many you lose, you have to know where they all are.
mhm,
So I just don't know how that can be an accurate statistic. But maybe
yeah.
they have some way of figuring that out. I don't know.
I'll tell you this though. The I would say the ratio of swarms to bee loss seems to be pretty consistent. Not seeing nearly the amount of swarms at all. Reports
You mean
us
just
just
wild?
seeing or catching them. Yeah, just we're not just
Could
not
be.
seeing that like we have in years past.
Yeah,
You
I don't
know,
know.
so
I just can't. I can't imagine how bees, 30 feet up in a big old tree up there in Ohio survived the winter. I guess some of them did, but I can't imagine how they did when it
There
was like -20 degrees for like 2 weeks in a row. I don't know how they survived that, but maybe they did.
there was a
If they did,
colony.
they're dang good, tough bees. That's for sure.
Mhm. There was a colony at my mom's place, right off the front of her house. Greg's been there. It was larger tree right by her pull around, and there was a colony in there, and they were probably 25 or 30 feet up, and it was high enough up that my mom had said, "Oh, do you want to check them sometime?" And I said, "I am not climbing up a tree 30 feet to look in a hole."
to see
And
bee butts, not gonna do it.
they're gone. They
Comment
didn't
by
last.
DC
They
here,
didn't
and
last
it,
the
it
winter.
makes sense. How many more contaminants do the bees deal with today than 20 years ago?
Oh man,
I know there are more, but I don't know how many more. I mean,
that almost makes your stomach sick. Just think about all of the, just everything from synthetics, the all the GMO stuff, all those conversations. I mean, it seems like bees are facing an uphill battle no matter which way we cut it.
yeah, I guess my question would be though, back in the 60s and 70s, it was just the pollution was so bad. I know there are different contaminants now, but is it really more per part per million or whatever the term is? I don't know. Who knows? I don't know. But obviously, there are more things out. They've invented things, and there are more things out there than there used to be. So that's true. The bees are always having to adapt, and because the bees are having to adapt, the beekeepers are having to adapt as well, and it's a challenge. Michael says all you can do is be the best keeper you can be. Use little or nothing if at all possible, and just do what works for you in your particular situation. That the bottom, the second, the last comment of that, just do what works best for you in your particular situation. That is the answer right there. The question is figuring out what's best for you, and that's part of the
Mhm.
art of beekeeping, right? That's part of the art of it is just figuring out what works best for you. All right,
Mhm.
this is a good question, and it's from Holly Hawk out there in California. She says, "Can Bruce ship a bucket?" The answer to that is yes, if I have enough. And I do have a website, just brucesbees.com, where I sell my honey. But and I had buckets on there. I almost got in trouble because I had I think 10 or 15 buckets on there for sale. Right then, it was a couple of weeks before we harvested, and I didn't have that many buckets in stock, and somebody ordered a bucket from me, and I really didn't want to sell any buckets, so I immediately sent him his bucket. I was almost out, and then I took that down. But we're going to see what kind of harvest we have in a couple of weeks, and if I have a kind of harvest I'm hoping to have, I'll sell a few buckets. But the truth of the matter is, profit is better in smaller quantities. That's just the way it is. And so I don't love to sell big buckets or a lot of buckets. I will, I'll sell some here or there. if I feel like I can. But if I'm feeling like I'm not going to have enough honey to provide my other customers, my local people, the honey that they need, my stores and stuff, I cut off the supply of buckets. But we'll just see what we come up with. And I every year I usually ship out a few, or I sell a few to people that want buckets. And but yes, that is available and it's possible if I have enough to do that. It's amazing that you can send a 5-gallon bucket through the UPS and it actually arrives. Although the guy did tell me that it had like part of the plastic was kind of cracked off of it, so it was kind of damaged, but the honey did not spill out. The bucket was damaged a little bit, but you can do it.
I was just going to say, do you have to use a different type of a bucket?
No, I just put it, what I do because later in the year, particularly the honey will start to crystallize. I run everything through my beautiful Maxim bottling tank here, and I just get a new bucket. I may use a bucket that's been used before, but I get a new lid for sure, and I run it just clean honey into that bucket, fresh decrystallized honey into that bucket, and I put a brand new lid on there, make sure it's sealed very good, and then I just use tape, a really good couple layers of tape around the edge of the bucket, and I slap the label on the top of it, and I ship it, and and it's every time I've done it, I haven't done it with a lot of them, but it's worked. I figure you put it in a box. You almost have to put it on a pallet as heavy as you put it in a box. They may not know really what it is. They may toss it around and it may get thrown around in there and get broken. So I just ship it in bucket form, and I go over to the UPS store and you pick it up, put the label on, they just check it in and they just send it. And it's worked for me so far. That's what I do. But I do make sure it's in a bucket with a good lid, like a good bucket that's in great shape, like a 90 mil bucket, particularly, I would say, with a brand new lid that's with the little rip with the tear seal around the side. Make sure it's tacked on really good so it's not going to leak, and then I tape it on as well around the edges, and so it works that way. He did say I think it was damaged and maybe the little honey was leaking in the tape, but it didn't spill anywhere else. Just a little bit came out on the tape, but because they had been rough with it, I'm sure.
Wonderful.
Okay, let's see. Next question. Any news back on bees sent to the necropsy checks? Didn't we do some testing on that? Greg, didn't some people send you some bees?
Yeah,
send them off.
The samples that I received and my own samples, we didn't see Nosema cerani, so could rule that one out.
I've had a little Nosema in some of mine in the past, but when I told Ian up in Canada how much I had, he kind of was like, "Oh, we don't even worry about it until it's X number of spores," which was, I think my highest ones were lower than his minimal worry moment. So I've never had too much of a problem with Nosema either that I know of. I lost a lot of bees up in Ozark, not this past season, but the season before, last year in 2023, 24. And I thought it was probably because of Nosema, because the bees just quit eating. I put all those Michael Palmer bees, queens, and I may have even had some of your queens up there, Greg. I can't remember. And it was up in that Ozark bee yard, and I was feeding them. I put them in there late in the year. I was feeding them like crazy, and they just stopped eating. And I thought it was probably Nosema. There was something going on with their gut, I know. I did have Hive Alive in the syrup and everything, but they just during a dearth they wouldn't eat, and obviously bees that won't eat during a dearth are not going to survive. And so, but that bee yard did have some Nosema in it, which is the only time I've ever sent any off that had Nosema, significant amount. But I think they just that was a survival of the fittest thing. Most of those bees died out. The ones that survived were really strong, and it got rid of most of my mean bees, that's for sure. Anyway, so, but yeah. All right, Glade Session says this: for Utah Bee Man, we would all love to be able to be treatment free, but most of us are not in an area that doesn't get a ton of pressure from managed hives with mite loads. That's a true statement. Most people have bees around that, there's no way to really develop that in a lot of cases. If you have a bee that's pretty well, and then you got a bunch of beekeepers surrounding you that don't have mite issues, then there might be a problem there. But that is a good point, Glade. I think a lot of us are in that situation. And Glade's out in the middle of nowhere in Utah, so if he has that issue, then any of us who live in populated areas that have a lot of bees around us, may deal with that. Any comments on that? I'm just kind of rolling through this. Greg, you got any comments on that?
I do, but that's going to be 2-hour fire and brimstone.
Okay.
Maybe some other time on that one.
Glade, bring that question back next time, and maybe we can spend more time on it.
Because he's so on point, it hurts.
Yep.
Are you saying that you don't want like a reaction video made off of this?
I mean, hey, reviews. What's this? What's the? Yeah, no. I've got a lot stored up, and to be fair, I think I've missed the last couple stream teams, and just can't seem to. Right now, I'm like beyond exhausted, and so the filter of slow to speak, slow to wrath. You know,
I got you.
I'm not going to be able to practice that very well.
Okay, real quick, we got a question from DC here. On average, how much honey is a 10 frame medium? I assume a 10 frame medium super. What I found is, and I have spacing 10 frame, 9 frame, and 8 frame spacing in my 10 frame boxes, and we get a little over a half a bucket per box. The 8 frame spacing and 9 frame spacing, they draw them out fatter. Actually, I think there's a little more honey in that, but we figure on, I think, a little more than a half of a bucket from a 10 frame box. We get 2 boxes equals more than 1 bucket. So whatever that, I don't know, have an exact amount. Maybe it's like 2/3 of a bucket or a little bit less than that, but that's what we average. A nice full super, that's all the frames full of honey. I don't know if you guys see anything different. That's how it has worked out.
About that 30 to 35 pounds, I think.
Yeah,
if I figure 8 or 9 frame fatties, they're really plump, all of them. Maybe you get 36, 37 pounds, but
yeah,
I usually figure on about 30.
Yeah, I just figure what I do is I figure how many supers do I have, and I just figure half as many buckets, but it usually ends up being a little bit more than that, or quite a bit more than that, a fair amount more, but that's what I figure. We're getting there. Have a swarm caught in 2 deeps. Will a skateboard work to get them all into one? I would say yes. If you catch a swarm in 2 boxes and you put that skateboard between them, they should all go down, shouldn't they? Now, one thing to remember, I think this is probably true. The skateboard works for a couple of days, until they're pretty much out. But if you leave it on too long, they'll start to figure it out and get back up in there. So you got to kind of watch it, or otherwise you'll have bees back up in there. What we say, Greg, I think about a day per super is what they say on that. Something like that.
That seems to be on point.
Okay, we're getting through them. I see you're tired there, Greg. You're about done. Let's see. Do any of you use Super DFM? I'm sorry, I'm not sure on the name. That is what it's called, yes. Super DFM, and it's Strong Microbials produces that. I've used it some. I haven't used it as consistently as I would like to, and I think it helps, but I should get more consistent with it. What are you guys' opinions on the Super DFM probiotics?
Susie and I were driving in today or yesterday. No, this morning, and there was boom sprayers out getting ready to spray just some. They haven't even put a crop in, so I pre-emerged just an overall herbicide, and so that is on my list of things to do this week, is to make sure that everything in this yard or an adjoining yard gets a nice dose of the DFM with the 801, which is more designed for that, just to help buffer that, help them process that. So we'll be putting it on, and we have we don't have time for it now, but I have helped bring colonies back from the dead with the combination of Super DFM and the thymol and the things that are in the Hive Life syrup. So big fan.
Yeah, I think it's I know that there are people that argue that it doesn't help, but I believe that it probably does, and I've seen people like you and others really believe in it firmly, and they utilize it consistently and have good results. And so I use it, but like I say, I don't use it as much as I should. I probably it's just hard for me to remember.
It's one more
as I am with things. It's just hard to remember to do that. I think we put it on there, Greg, when you were here, didn't we? I think we put some on. I think we put it on the colonies. We put it on the colonies as we were
very specific, accurate, measured dose, if I remember right.
Well, we just used the little spoon. Well, you used the hive tool.
Yeah, just the hive.
I use the spoon. I use the spoon to do it. Greg's over there with hive tool, just scooping it out and throwing it in there.
You bought it. Just go in there.
The right amount. Yeah, it's about the right amount, I think. So
it is.
Brian, any thoughts on the Super DFM?
I use it. Yeah, it's once a month, and
I think it's really. I think in principle, like you said, Greg, especially if there's a lot of pressure, environmental pressure, which there has been a lot of that this year in so many different ways. I think it can be valuable in that case, particularly in particular. I've got around here, there's agriculture everywhere, peanuts, cotton, corn, all kinds of stuff around here. And my bees are, I don't know if I have a bee yard that's not close to some kind of agriculture. And so it's definitely good to use, especially the 801. The DFM 801 is really good to use for that. But I think the Super DFM has its advantages as well. That's pretty much all the comments. I'd like to go through and tell everyone thanks for all these wonderful super chats. It really helps the channel out. Brian, thanks for the hashtag stream team, hashtag street team. $20. Appreciate that, man. And
there was a question on the last
super chat.
We'll
hit it when we get there. I saw that. Mark Zenner, appreciate it. Thanks for having these weekly streams. We really appreciate that, Mark Zenner. Thanks for checking in, and it means a lot that you're here, and everyone else as well. Appreciate that, man. We got Mike's Bees, Easy Ox, home of Easy Ox. Yes, Mike. Great product, great man, veteran, and he's got the coolest logo of anyone I think out there. So I've got a hat. I should have worn it tonight. I had it, but I've got my own hat right here. Brian Lee made this hat for me with my Bruce's Bees logo. And he made me a few of these, and so I love my hats, and so I wore mine tonight. But not to say Mike's might not appear as Mike Propola or all the different ones I have on different videos. If you'll notice, I haven't stuck to the one hat that I used to wear all the time, the Alabama hat, which I do love my Alabama still, but I just thought I'd just kind of branch out and try some different things for a while, particularly my own brand, Bruce's Bees. Why not wear it, right?
There you go.
Greg, thanks so much for the super chat. Be the lighthouse. Friends don't let friends paint boxes. I love it. Hashtag Endure Hive. Thanks, Greg. Appreciate it, man. Lisa, Grammy Midwife, she says, super sticker. Thanks, Grammy, for the super sticker. We really appreciate that. It helps a lot. Grammy is just awesome. She's right here, just about 20 miles up the road from me, and just has become a tremendous Grammy is heavily involved with Hives for Heroes, has a lot of tremendous respect for the Hives for Heroes, military veterans, military folks, and first responders. And she's put so much time and effort into that program. And I know the veterans appreciate it. We appreciate Lisa for your service, for helping folks out, which reminds me, I have a new mentee that I'm helping out. His name is Thomas, and he is awesome. And he actually helped me harvest honey spring, and he's going to help with the extraction. Greg down here in a couple of weeks, so you get to meet Thomas. He's a veteran, just a great guy, and he's super motivated. Oops, what did that one say? I missed that one, Brian.
Trust me, I'll find it.
I'm sorry, I blew right past the super sticker. I meant to show it, and I hit it off instead. Let me show this last one. Ask this question while Brian finds that. Justin Strom says, in Marin County, California, I need to combine several swarms back into my yards this weekend. Do you guys use newspapers and place a swarm on top above a honey super and then lower it to the brood area after a couple of days? If you're going to combine swarms into, I assume he means into other colonies, like add them into and combine them with other colonies, if that's what he means. Greg, you got any tricks for that? If you're going to combine, I guess you use the same principles you would combining any colonies.
Anything are these queenless swarms? Are they queen right swarms? I mean, I'd imagine they're queenless. That's why he's trying to combine them. I'm not sure why you would want to combine a queen right swarm, but I would just throw them. I probably worry about that less than most folks do, because if it goes wrong, I always have, every week at least a couple hundred cells that are getting ready to emerge. So if something doesn't go right, it's nothing for me just to drop a cell out there. Or I've got virgin queens emerging. It's nothing to put something out there. I guess the safe bet would be probably newspaper combined. But I don't do that, just because when I'm out there in the field, like, there's no newspapers. So it's like, how can I rectify this now? Rather than, say, oh, well, I'll come around to it, or I'll mark the hive a certain way and come around. No, If it's something needs combined and it's queenless, I literally just put them on top of a strong colony, let them work their way down. If I'm really worried about it, yeah, I'll put an empty box in between to kind of separate them. But
Justin says, Brian, can you pull that comment up that his next comment?
Let me see.
I'm in the starred ones now.
Oh yeah. Let me scroll down here.
He said, yes, that's what I mean. Some queenless and some with queens.
Yeah.
Greg, I'm like you. I just kind of sit on there and see what happens. I've gotten to the point now where if I have a real weak colony, I'll just throw it on top of their colony and I guess they'll work it out. But it never hurts to do a newspaper combine. If you've got a queen in that swarm, just know that whenever those bees do intermingle, that one of the queens is going to win out. So, you got to make, if there's 2 queens in there, they're going to fight it out. If it's just one, if one of them's queenless, they'll probably integrate pretty easily. My mentor would just smoke the heck out of the bees. And then he would just put the new one on top, smoke them all. So they get all kind of confused. And then he puts the other colony on top and let them work it out. I just set them on there. I've done that with laying workers. I've done it with drone laying bees as well. And they seem to figure it out somehow. And, frankly, I've lost some colonies that way, but they were probably on their way out anyway. So don't worry too much about it. But if you're concerned about it, the newspaper combine, it works. A lot of people do that, and that's not a bad idea. But just know if you got 2 queens, they're going to duke it out. That's just what's going to happen. Hey, Brian, you just deleted a comment I was going to.
Oh, okay.
Brian.
She had a question about custom gloves. Does anyone know?
Yeah.
Of anyone that makes custom gloves? We'll pull that back up. We'll do that'll be our last official question before we do the super chat.
Here, let's.
How's the body balm by Bruce sales going? Well, it's not going very good,
body
Scott.
bars by Bruce.
It's not going very good, Scott, because it does not yet exist. Brian Lee was tasked to figure that out, and he hasn't done it yet. So when Brian Lee figures it out, then we'll.
Don't put that on Brian Lee, because he was going to make it happen in a big way. Just you threatening his integrity. It's going to be a thing tomorrow. Just boom.
That is true. He'll be selling it. He'll be selling it for sure. He'll be at least talking about it. He'll be sending samples out to people.
He's gonna have like pictures of like Arnold in the 70s with your head like photoshopped on it.
I think Brian is I think he's about to retire pretty soon. And when he does that, he'll work on it, until he comes up with the right formula. So
if Brian's listening though, I kind of see the logo more as that like 1920s like cartoon circus weightlifter guy, where he's like really big shouldered, really skinny waist, black pants, the big belt, the black boots, but the big handlebar mustache, the big Russian lifter guy.
Have the bald head with the big handlebar. That's me, the bald head up here. So anyway,
me too.
All right, last question here, by. Well, wait a second. Hold on. Brian, you're just too quick, man. Carol McCarthy Logston says, does anyone know if there's a company that makes custom gloves? They are too big on my fingers. If they're too big on my fingers, fun fact, allergic to bees, not looking to get stung. I don't know. I think that's something you have to kind of try. If anyone knows, just drop it in the comments. If anyone knows of a custom glove company. The problem with gloves is I've never found a glove that I never get stung through. If anyone has, I've had some very expensive gloves. I've got some from Apis Tactical. They're very good. I typically just wear nitrile gloves. The black Venom Steel nitrile gloves, they are double layered. They have a white layer in the middle, a black layer on the outside, and I rarely get stung through those, but it does happen occasionally. And so I have been stung very rarely through my Apis Tactical gloves. Apis Tactical has 2 different styles. I know of one of them is more the bulky gloves, kind of like what you're talking about, Carol, that are kind of big on the fingers, and they're kind of the bulky, typical beekeeping gloves. They have another style that cinches, it Velcros around the wrist. You can put your bee jacket over, and those I think are tighter and more true. You have those, don't you, Brian? Brian, you have some of those, don't you? Do you have the ones that go over the? Anyway, they've got some that kind of cinch around your wrist pretty tight. And I think those are probably more likely to get stung or prone to get stung through those. I'm not sure. I don't have a pair like that, but there are different brands out there. You just kind of have to try different things. And if you're anaphylactically allergic, it's you need to it's kind of a risk. So if anyone knows of any gloves that are 100% sting proof, let her know, or any custom gloves, let her know about that in the comment section. Those Apis Tactical.
Yeah, we're dealers for them here in Ohio, so we've got both of them. Let's see, back a little further.
I know one of them isn't one of them cowhide, the other one goat skin. Isn't that right? I believe
these are both the same.
Are
As
they?
far as that goes, I like these. And I've been using them a lot, especially pulling nukes and then going back the next day and putting queens in. I just been throwing these on and then feeding specifically.
Which ones are those? Show us the wrist on those. Are those the ones that the shorter ones or the longer ones?
Shorts.
Those are the shorter ones.
Well, and what's nice about the shorts is they go up past the sting you in the here. So they go just up about to right here, where the half gloves are pretty good too. But I like these ones are like the shorts are like they're like a mechanic's glove, but add like 2 inches.
Yeah, they're the dexterity on those I think is better. I need to get a pair.
They're nice.
And the other ones, I got the ones that were longer. One problem I had, and I've started using. I've if you see my videos, you know this, but I've kind of started a new bee jacket. I love the ones I used to use, but now I've got the sting stopper I've been using from Foxhound, and I like the wrist on those, and the gloves. Actually, my nitro gloves go right. I put them right under the sleeves, and you can Velcro the sleeves down really good. But it seems like if you use these gloves, you could put that underneath it in a Velcro, and it would really help. And so, if you're interested in finding out about the Foxhound jacket, I think that there's a link. If you just go to the description, you'll be able to just tap on the screen or whatever and see it. It's actually a YouTube link that pops up the Foxhound, and so it's very easy to use, and so you can go in and check that out. But I really love the jacket I used before, but there are a few things about the Foxhound. It's longer in length, and it just works for me a little better right now. I'd recommend both brands, but anyway, as far as gloves go, I do like my Apis Tactical gloves that I got. I got the one pair, and they have been effective. I normally use nitrile for dexterity things, but if I just am doing, like you said, Greg, like doing bulk work where I'm not trying to handle queens or anything like that, I put them on, and I don't know if I've been stung through the gloves yet. Honestly, I don't think I have. And that's rare because most gloves I've ever had, I do get stung occasionally. But I think I talked to the creator of the Apis Tactical. I think that the smaller ones, the wrist length ones, I think they are the dexterity is better. I think it's a different material. I think they look the same, but you can look into that. I might be wrong on that.
Yeah, they're both very soft goat skin. I mean, they're they're
both goat skin. Okay,
it's very, very soft. The half gloves are. I mean,
they're pretty good. They fit your finger. They fit your fingers a lot better. I do know that because I tried them both on at the conference. But I just felt like when I was going to work my bees, if I needed the dexterity, I'd just continue to use the nitrils, and that's what I've done. And now that my bees are nicer, I don't get lit up quite as bad typically, so they work out fine. Well, let's just kind of go around the horn real quick and wrap this thing up. Brian, what you got coming up in the next week or two here?
I tell you, probably the next time that I get into them, it's going to be assess the nectar flow, what's coming in. If I don't see like signs that I feel like they're moving in a good direction as far as pulling in nectar, then buckets are going to go on those colonies. So I just, I don't want to play around with having my colonies stall out. So, but it's just continue to build. I mean, I've got one, no, there's 2 colonies that are going through making queens. One, I don't know what happened, whether I killed a queen or something. She was there 1 week and next inspection gone. So when I check them the next time, if I still see that colony does not have a queen, then I'm just the swarm that I have sitting out in the yard here. I'm just going to combine that back. I'm not going to play around with trying to get a queen in a colony when I've got a brand new swarm that I got. So it'll just be a combine there and let them roll. So, but that's all. I mean, it's just riding what we have in front of us, So not complaining about it though. So it's fun. I've got more colonies than when I started the year with. So I am not going to
Yeah.
complain.
No, you're doing phenomenal. And guys, if you're not a subscriber to Brian's channel at Castle Hives, um, he's doing some great things over there. Especially if you're like a hobbyist trying to grow,
Mhm.
man, he's doing some good things and walking through the process. Excuse me.
I'll tell you guys too, that hex hive,
It's doing well, huh?
Greg, you need one of them in the learning yard.
Woo, that'd be fun.
That joker, believe it or not, so it's set up in 3 sections with 5 frames in each section. So it's got 15 frames to a box, and it has foundation wise, there's about 9.5 frames worth of foundation in it. So it's almost like one box is close to almost a 10 frame box.
Wow.
So they have the bottom box is completely, literally every frame is drawn out, and they're up in the second box, and they've got 5 frames in the second box drawn out.
Wow.
And they started, so how the hex was set up, the entrance facing towards the morning sun, they started in that section and worked the first 5. Then they went to this other section closer to the entrance, built those 5, and then to the back, those 5. Now, when they went up top, they're towards the entrance, working those 5. It's a slick configuration. I like it. I like that thing.
Cool. That's pretty neat.
Yeah. Slick.
Yeah, it's been fun watching your journey, Brian, for sure.
It's been fun.
So down here, we're gearing up for honey harvest in a couple of weeks. We got some fun folks coming in. I think someone on this chat right here might actually be here. Guy down there, Greg. And I've been trying to get the guy over there to come, but he doesn't want to come. He told me he just not interested in coming all the way to Alabama. So
We need a private jet. Get him in, get him out.
Yeah, well, Greg, you're the big business guy. Maybe you could pay that 25 grand fee to get him down here in a private jet. He'd probably do it.
I take 2 weeks off, and you just start laying the fat jokes on there, just nonstop. Unbelievable. Big business
Fat jokes. I was just saying you're the guy with the
big
big business, man.
Right.
I'm talking about big business financially, not
Big
the big business.
Oh, that's definitely not it.
Greg, you took that. Don't be offended. It's okay.
I'm sensitive right now, Bruce.
Yeah, super hypersensitive.
Stupid
But down
bread.
here, we're getting ready for the honey harvest. A couple of interesting things that I'm going to be checking on the next few days, and hopefully I can shoot some video. Number one, the infinity frames I put on. Actually, I just ran out. I try not to do it much on Sunday, but I had these frames that needed to be on there, so I just went down. Wasn't there, but just a few minutes. We found a colony, found a super, put the infinity frames in there, threw them on a colony. I don't honestly expect them to draw that thing out with our flow. I think it's probably starting to kind of drop down, and there's really just not much time. But maybe they will. We'll see how they do with that. I'm not going to be disappointed if they don't, because I'm really asking those bees. I'm asking a lot out of those frames because they really shouldn't be able to do it in the amount of time that they have left of the flow. So that's one thing we'll be checking on. Second thing that we're going to be following up on in the next few weeks is the simple comb. I put that in at the end of our spring flow, and they've been in the hives ever since. The bees had not touched it much, but I did notice when I checked in them, I think a couple of weeks ago, they were starting to draw it out down in Slocum. And so we'll see what happens. My main honey source is liquid honey. That's what I sell. That's where my honey, where my money is, so to speak. That's how I make my hay, so to speak. And so I can't just afford it. I can't afford to take 3 or 4 colonies and just dedicate them to simple comb. I just can't do that. And so what I did was I put the simple comb in the center. I did a video on how I did it, and I just put them on my other colonies just as if they were part of a regular super. And so the bees are always, I think, going to typically draw out the comb. They're going to fill it up first and cap it before they fill out anything like a simple comb or a Ross round. But I did go in and they were starting to draw that stuff out in the one that was actually in the video that I did on the simple comb a few weeks back. So I do plan to follow up on that, and we'll talk about it. I know it works. Last year it worked some for me. The issue is it has to be perfect conditions for it to work. And so this year's been pretty good. We'll see. I haven't been in some of those supers in a while, so we'll see what they've done and see what we end up with. I think I'm going to end up with some. I don't know if they'll all get drawn out, but filled out, but hopefully most of them will. And so that's what's going on here as far as videos go. We're just kind of in a holding pattern until we harvest in a couple of weeks. And I hope to have some really fun footage of that experience. We're going to have folks coming in from Utah, from Ohio, local people. We've got my new hives for Heroes Minty is going to be on there. And then he'll be there, I think, helping extract. And then just a lot of, it's always a good time. Those are some of my favorite videos and times of each year. Although we work extremely hard for the summer honey harvest, we have a blast at the same time, and it's always a great time. So look forward to that. But that's what's coming up in my neck of the woods, and we're just going to keep plugging along. And I fortunately, I've had my set of challenges, but I've been really blessed this year to have kind of so far a pretty successful season, and we'll see if it ends up continuing to be that way. I've had some things that have kind of been dropped in my lap lately. Greg and I talked a little bit about it today. It's something I really can't talk about on here, but I believe the Lord's looking out for me, and he's aware of what my desires are, and I hope I can keep mine in alignment with his, and I keep moving this thing forward, not only for my success, but to help other people as well. I really want to be I've met someone, a local businessman who is extremely well off, and he's part of, I think, the biggest company here in Alabama. If I'm not mistaken, the owner of the company is the number one, the most wealthy guy in the state of Alabama. But this is a part of that company, and this guy they just really want to give back. I was really impressed, and so there might be some opportunities there down the road. So I've been really blessed. I can't tell you how much I've been blessed. This stream team, this whole community, the YouTube channel, the bees, my life has just been, I've been, like Dave Ramsey said, people ask how he's doing. All I can say is better than I deserve. And that is 100% true. It's because of that guy up there. So anyway, I appreciate all the support from you guys and from the community and from everyone. It's just been awesome. All my customers locally here, all my friends, it's just been a phenomenal thing. But we do have a lot of exciting times coming up still this year. But once the honey comes off, then it gets a little bit miserable for a while as we try to keep these bees alive through the summer. One last comment here before I turn it over to you, Greg. One last super chat. Brian Lee, we talked about him earlier. So he heard what we said, I guess. So Brian, I guess you're my cream, whatever developer, or whatever that is stuff is called, the soap developer, whatever you want to call it. That's your job. Anyway, thanks for the super chat, Brian. It's always great chat with the stream team. Thanks, Brian. Brian has been one of our supporters probably from the start, or very close to the start of when we've done it. And can't thank you enough. He's become a close friend of mine. He lives a few miles from here. He lives up in Birmingham. He also has a place down in Tallahassee, so he drives right through here occasionally, and we get together and we talk about things. And Brian is a great man and a good friend, and I appreciate you, Brian, for all that you do, and in the beekeeping community. Greg, why don't you bring it on home, man?
All right. Well, here at the farm, the next week looks just it's some of the hardest times. It's just full on, and we're just cutting nukes out of our colonies and praying that it doesn't rain on top of us again, and just moving forward, just getting past this season here. The weather affects things. The weather slows things down. The weather sometimes has results that's not ideal. It doesn't conform to our goals and our growth. But it is what it is. And I think, if anything, it just reminds me that, we got to stop worrying about all the things that we can't control. Why are the bees dying? Why are the mites this? And all, okay, but if we spent more time focusing on the things that we can actually impact, not just our beekeeping, but in our families and our jobs and our relationships and our communities. If we focus on the things that we do have leverage, we focus on the things that we can actually do something about, right? And just leave everything else to God. Because at the end of the day, he's got the whole world in his hands. So here we are worried about things that we can't control. It doesn't make any kind of sense. Let's focus on the things that we can actually do and be that lighthouse to others. That's kind of where I'm at right now. It's especially when we get into the hardest times of the year. It's when we definitely have to be able to lean on God and trust that he's got this whole thing figured out, and it's taking it step by step. Just DC's bees, Greg. One step at a time is how we make it to the Lord's finish line. prayers, brother. Well, thanks, DC. That's exactly what it is. At the end of the day, you know, there are so many folks right now who would give absolutely everything to be in a position where some of their biggest challenges in life was the lack of a honey flow. No matter which way you cut it, there is always somebody somewhere who has it way worse off than you. And you would give anything to be in your position if you were to walk a mile in their shoes. So don't forget that either. You know, it's easy for us to get up here, throw comments around, you know, get emotional about things, share our experience. At the end of the day, we live in the greatest country on planet Earth, where we have freedoms like none other folks do, and we serve a mighty God greater than all of these things and all of these troubles that we could ever face. So at the end of the day, let's keep that into perspective. So I'm gonna keep that in mind too. Just remember, the God on the mountain is the God in the valley is also the God that's on the mountain there too. And so He hasn't brought you this far in your journey to watch you drown. So keep that in mind. We're going to keep plugging along here at the farm. I just want to say thanks again for all the community, all the folks here locally in Ohio. We have folks coming from all over the country for nukes, as far as Texas this year, to pick up nukes. Unbelievable to me, the kind of support that we get. I just want you guys to all know how much we love and appreciate you guys, from our entire family to you guys. We wouldn't be here without your support. So we cannot thank you enough for that. Next Wednesday, Bruce, whose channel are we on? Okay, so we're back. See, at some point, 3.5 years, I'd figure we'd get the rotation. So it goes south, then it comes up to me, and then it goes a little further north to Brian, and then it goes back around again. Okay. All right. Next Wednesday, 8 p.m. on the Nature's Image Farm YouTube channel. I can't even imagine what is in 1 week from right now, all the things that are going on in all the bee yards in the country. There's going to be a lot to talk about. We'll definitely dig into there. We're going to focus on some Q&A, summertime Q&A, or prepping for a quality summer. So think of some questions, bring them next week, and we'll see you next time. As always, I want to remind you to be the lighthouse and be the change you want to see in this world. We'll see you next time. Thanks for watching.